Good afternoon, everyone. It took us COVID-19 pandemic to understand how environment, nature, and its ecological processes function, where we saw wild animals freely moving in their original habitat, which is otherwise encroached by the humans. We saw some of the most polluted rivers getting clean on their own. We've also felt how it is to breathe clean air and see the bluest of the skies in the metro cities. Welcome to the planet Earth. The planet has always been sustainable on its own, until we arrived. It's amazing to talk about sustainability when we have just celebrated the World Environment Day on the 5th day of this month. Most of us on this day pledge to protect and conserve our environment along with its species, including plants and animals, and also celebrate the accomplishments and summits conquered in this field by individuals and organizations. Apparently, a lot of work has been done in this direction and still needs more contribution from all of us. One such contribution is by making our campuses green and sustainable. Various studies have reported that green campuses directly affect the psychological and physiological well-being of the students, which ultimately help them become more efficient. We are all well versed with the concept of sustainable development, and I'm sure many of you must have taught the concept and the principles of sustainable development either in the classrooms, conferences, or even at home to your own kids. But still, I will take a few minutes to highlight its historical timeline, only with the landmark events which helped it gain its shape and momentum, and to also know that how this is the core principle today which is helping us protect the Earth's resources by meeting the needs of diverse communities with equitable benefits to ensure a strong and healthy society. I will start with a famous book on man-made environmental destruction written by Rachel Carson in the year 1962. The name of the book is Silent Spring. This book is a milestone which helped us understand the relation between environment, economy, and the society. It described how the application of a pesticide, DDT, can severely affect communities from insects, worms, fishes, birds, plants, and to even humans. Its impact was mobilized by the process of biomagnification, where chemicals such as DDT accumulated in the fatty tissues of humans and animals and increased at every trophic level of the food chain. Discovery and application of the pesticides in the agriculture sector challenged the sustainability of the very basis of life on planet. And Silent Spring helped us know how vulnerable our Earth is. Then in 1969, in the United States of America, the National Environmental Policy Act was passed. It is one of the early milestones towards sustainability. This is a national legislative framework to protect the environment. The law also formulated the basis for environmental impact assessment in the world. Another step towards sustainability was polluter pays principle. It is one of the core principles of sustainable development, articulated in 1972 by the Council of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is one of the fundamental principles that governs the modern-day environmental policies and laws globally. Then we had another remarkable event in 1972, the United Nations Conference on Human Environment, or Stockholm Conference. It was convened to address issues concerning the environment and sustainable development. It was the first major international conference to address the issues related to environment. It laid emphasis on the detrimental impacts of population, economic development, technological and industrial advancements. Since then, it has been the backbone of various international conferences on environment across the globe. Also the same year in 1972, Club of Rome published their study titled Limits to Growth, which explained that Earth's resources probably won't be able to support the consumption of the human population and its economic development in the future. In short, it clearly said that the ecological footprint of humans is way more than the carrying capacity of the Earth. But nonetheless, authors were equally hopeful that man can impose limits on himself, say he can control the production and consumption, and ultimately achieve a state of global equilibrium between humans and the resource consumption. Another important conference happened in Stockholm, Sweden in 1972. This led to the establishment of an environmental body called as United Nations Environment Programme. This program manages and regulates United Nations environmental activities and assists developing nations in implementing its policies and practices. The concept of sustainable development was first talked about in 1980 in a document named World Conservation Strategy, presented by the International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. This report laid emphasis on not just the cure, but prevention of the exploitation of the living resources. The document suggested both conservation and development have to function together in order to sustain ecosystem and its components, thus attaining a sustainable society. And then it was in the year 1987 when the term sustainable development became popular with the publishing of a report named Our Common Future, also known as the Brundtland Report, a report of the World Commission on Environment and Development. This brought together social, economic, cultural, and environmental issues along with global solutions. This idea was unique as it suggested the possibility of development while maintaining ecological sustainability. This gave the much accepted definition of sustainable development which most of us accept today and believe in. That is, development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. We all know about Earth Summit. United Nations Conference on Environment and Development was held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992. This conference adopted an agenda which is referred to as Agenda 21 for Environment and Development, where 21 denoted 21st century. UNCED called for a plan of action for sustainable development, which contained the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development and also acknowledged each nation's right to pursue its social and economic progress and also allocated responsibilities to the states of adopting a model of sustainable development. It also gave the Statement of Forest Principles to safeguard the forests globally. Agreements were also reached on the Convention on Biological Diversity to conserve the world's flora and fauna, and the Framework Convention on Climate Change for developing mechanism to combat climate change was also put forward. Another landmark event to strengthen the principles of sustainability happened in the year 2000. When the United Nations Millennium Declaration was signed by some 189 countries, where they committed to eradicate extreme poverty in all its form by 2015. In order to pursue their progress towards the commitments, time-bound and quantified goals and targets, which were called as the Millennium Development Goals, were developed for combating poverty in its many dimensions, which includes reducing poverty, hunger, disease, environmental degradation, gender discrimination, etc. There were 8 Millennium Development Goals, 21 targets, and 60 indicators to accomplish these commitments. And then in the year 2005, Kyoto Protocol became an international legally binding law for developed countries in order to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, and it also led to the establishment of clean development mechanism for the developing nations. The emission reductions obligations under this protocol expired at the end of 2012 with a failed status, where many developed countries highly responsible for majority of carbon emissions gradually withdrew from the law. Yet another milestone meeting was held in 2012, which is the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. This also marked 20 years of the Rio Summit or the Earth Summit. And now, 50 years after Silent Spring and 40 years after Stockholm Declaration, This Conference on Sustainable Development presented an opportunity for the world to redirect and re-energize its political commitment to the three dimensions of sustainable development, which is economic growth, social improvement, and environmental protection. Rio 20 focused on two themes: one, to develop sustainable development goals, and two, formation of institutional framework for sustainable development. And apparently it resulted in a focused political outcome which contained clear and practical measures for implementing sustainable development goals. And the most recent milestone event for sustainable development is the latest Paris Agreement, which was laid out in the year 2015. This is a landmark accord to address the climate change and its detrimental impacts on the planet. After the failure of Kyoto Protocol, which was legally binding, Paris Agreement was constructed flexible in order to voluntarily set emission targets and function as per the capacity of the parties. The commitments laid by the nations target towards reducing the fossil fuel consumption, thus reducing carbon emissions, increasing the forest cover, which will all eventually help in attaining a sustainable future. So these are few of the many milestone events in the timeline of sustainable development. Apart from these events, there occurred many environmental hazards, accidents, wars, campaigns, which led to industrial pollution and degraded the environment and affected the human health, and also made us realize that how important it is for us to take care of the environment and the planet, such as civil war, Great London Smog, Green Belt Movement, 3 Mile Island accident, Bhopal gas tragedy, Chernobyl nuclear accident, Chipko movement, several oil spills, etc. So yes, I'm sure by now everyone must have recollected their knowledge on sustainable development. And for those learning about the concept for the first time, I would love to believe that you all understood the concept and at least the basic level with the help of these citations. Now that the idea of sustainability is clear to us, we need to know how we in the academic fraternity can establish our campuses such that our carbon footprint counts less, even at our workspaces. This not only has a huge contribution to world's energy consumption, but will inspire and motivate students and the society to live simply. What is a sustainable campus in higher education? A sustainable campus contributes to building of a sustainable society through education, research, collaborating with the society, and campus development. Such a campus not only focuses on the physical modifications such as building, but also implements modifications in its education system in order to achieve the goals of sustainability. Several authors have given definitions of sustainable campus, sustainable colleges, and sustainable universities. One of the authors, Hodig, says, I'll quote, "A sustainable university is defined as a higher educational institution that addresses, involves, and promotes on a regional or a global level the minimization of negative environmental, economic, societal, and health effects generated in the use of their resources in order to fulfill its functions of teaching, research, outreach, and partnership, and stewardship in ways to help society make the transition to sustainable lifestyles." Another study says, according to Al-Shuwaikat and Abu Bakr, I'll quote, "A sustainable university campus should be a healthy campus environment with a prosperous economy through energy and resource conservation, waste reduction, and an efficient environmental management, and promotes equity and social justice in its affairs and export these values at a community, national, and global levels." Unquote. Now, these definitions clearly refer to the triple bottom line theory of sustainability, according to which a sustainable institution has to protect the environment, ensure social equality and equity, and at the same time support economic growth. And they are all very much strongly interconnected. Universities and colleges are like micro societies built by various stakeholders, where development is important. Resources are consumed in different forms, such as water, heat, electricity, food, land, paper, etc. Therefore, it wouldn't be wrong to advocate that these campuses hold the core of sustainability. Now, coming to an important question, that why we need a sustainable campus. A very well-known environmental educator, David Orr, said, I'll quote, "The kind of education we need begins with the recognition that the crisis of global ecology is first and foremost a crisis of values, ideas, perspectives, and knowledge, which makes it a crisis of education, not one in education." Unquote. Now, if higher education adopts the role of stewardship in order to achieve a sustainable society, the nature of higher education would be different from what it is now. The teaching learning process at higher education institutes would help reflect a new method to teach, learn, and practice. A college or a university, if structured by social and environmental aspects, can function as a micro community, which is connected to local and global societies both. The concept of sustainability in higher education was first addressed in Stockholm Declaration 1972. This declaration focused on finding ways in which universities, their leaders, lecturers, researchers, and students can engage their resources in responding to the challenges of balancing between the human quest for economic and technological development with environmental preservation. An author, Fu, in 2013 stated that higher education is a great contributor for society to achieve sustainability. Now, when higher education institute considers sustainability as their priority, emphasis will be on practical and active learning, which is accompanied by real-time problem solving in the campus with social capital. And it has always been the research in higher education that has provided the first alarms regarding environmental challenges through their research, investigations, thus helping in accomplishing the objectives. When we talk about sustainable campus, most of us would think of a green campus. Now, campus greening is often the first step colleges or universities take towards sustainability. For many years now, higher education institutions are constantly expanding, which has therefore resulted in an increase in the use of automobiles, overconsumption of energy resources such as water, electricity, food, etc. And therefore, the first thing many of such academic institutes around the world do is to transform their campuses to make them greener. While general awareness in sustainability issues and saving environment has improved in recent years through social media, print media, news channels, awareness campaigns, etc., but this knowledge is not always translated into actual sustainable practice. Main agenda of higher education institutes has always been research and academic reputation, but implementation of their findings were never in their rulebooks until Stockholm Declaration happened. Over the past decades, university rankings have become a global phenomenon. Al-Shuwaikat and Abu Bakr in 2008 reported in one of their papers that the main focus of these rankings was on the importance of research and academic reputation, while environmental factors received little or no attention. Fortunately, green campus initiatives have significantly gained momentum since the Declaration on Sustainable Higher Education in Stockholm Declaration. Also, I would say that the failure of Kyoto Protocol and the commencement of Paris Accord ushered a paradigm shift towards building a low-carbon, sustainable society which can deal with climate change today. We know higher education institutes play a fundamental role in the society. They assist in the formation of future generations and in the preparation of future professionals with an objective to transform society towards sustainability. The role of education for sustainable development is globally acknowledged, thanks to the European Union Sustainable Development Strategy and the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, which have put universities and colleges on the forefront as the most suitable disseminators of the principles of sustainability. Therefore, higher education institutes have the duty to adopt and promote its principles. In the next video, we will learn about various green and sustainable initiatives taken by universities and colleges for their campuses both nationally and globally. Thank you so much.